All right. I got a lot to get to today. Welcome back, my friends. I'm glad you're here with us. I'm Bernie Miklasz, and this is the Bernie Show, presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. All right. I want to get into this. The big decision, the big controversy in the Mets series was, Oli Marmol choosing what to do in the bottom of the ninth, with the Mets coming to plate in a tie game. We know what happened. Well, let's just get into it. Now, you can always fast forward this a little bit. You can set the speed to you have me talking faster if you don't want to like sit through the whole video just at normal speed. There's ways that you can speed it up. So anyway, I just wanted to offer that. Listen, the Cardinals had a brutal series in New York, losing all four games in the Mets, and the most difficult defeat in that bunch of defeats was that 5-4 loss on Friday night at a raucous City Field, where that ballpark was hopping and jumping, wasn't it, all weekend long. The Cardinals had fought back for a 4-4 tie in the top of the ninth on a solo home run by Brendan Donovan, and at that point, Cardinals manager Oli Marmol had limited options as the game moved into the bottom of the ninth. The Cardinals still had their six-man rotation set up, remember, which means there's one less reliever available for the manager. And in Friday's game, because of yet another short start, fewer than 5 innings by Miles Miklasz, Marmal already had used 4 relievers: John King, Kyle Leahy, Jojo Romero, and Phil Maton. And Marmal had relied on Leahy and Maton for more than an inning. Each right-hander went an inning and a third. So, Oli was being resourceful. He was trying to stretch that bullpen out. And the bullpen was stretched thin because of that and because of Miklasz with another short start. And so when you got down to the bottom of the ninth inning, the only options left was your closer, Ryan Helsley, and then the other guys there also as an option were Ryan Fernandez and the rookie Matt Swanson, who had just come up Thursday to pitch an inning in his major league debut. So it's probably best to avoid using him in a tough spot Friday unless you had no choice. I get that. So realistically speaking, Marmol had to choose between Fernandez and Helsley. Listen, Fernandez is having a terrible season. No matter when he entered Friday's game, he was a high-risk move for the Cardinals. He could be detonated at any time. Before Friday's game, Fernandez had faced only 9 hitters in high-leverage situations. 5 of the 9 reached base on 3 hits, including a triple and 2 walks, and he only struck out 1 of the 9. He does not have the high leverage stuff that we saw from him last season. And in his 8 appearances this season before Friday, Fernandez had been blasted for a 7.71 ERA, 3.33 average, and a way too high 880 OPS. You don't want a reliever throwing batting practice in a tie game. I think that's a good thing to remember. But Marmol went with Fernandez, even though the Mets had their 3 most dangerous hitters in the lineup to begin the ninth. It would be, if it got past the first guy, it would be Francisco Lindor, the first guy, leading off the ninth, then Juan Soto, then Pete Alonso. By the way, those 3 guys, if you combine their salaries for 2025, they're making $124 million this year, just the 3 of them. Now, pardon my sorry cliche, but putting Fernandez in there to take on Lindor, and then maybe after Lindor, if the game's still going on, Soto and Alonso was like the ancient Romans throwing Christians and other prisoners to the lions in a horrific form of capital punishment called, I'm not kidding, condemnation by beast. All right, come to think of it, maybe sending Fernandez in there to stare at Lindor was not the same as, throwing a live human being to a gang of hungry lions. But what the heck? I'm just trying to make $1 here. So forgive me for my hackery, okay? I'm just trying. But we know what happened. Boom, ball go far, game over. On the second pitch by Fernandez, Lindor rocketed a mediocre cut fastball for a second deck home run, and the Mets walked off with a 5-4 win. That shot left Lindor's bat at 109 miles an hour. Yeah, he got it all, as they say. And the Cardinals were well on the way to getting swept by the Mets. So what do you think? Did Marmal blew it? Did he blow it? Pardon me, by using Fernandez over Helsley? I think I know how you feel about this, but I do want to talk about it. It's kind of one of those fun baseball decisions to discuss and debate. And I'll be right back to do it after I take a little time to tell you about DraftKings. And please support our sponsor, DraftKings. Baseball season is well underway, and it's time to step up to the plate with DraftKings Pick Six. Think of DraftKings Pick Six as your fastball right down the middle. It's the easiest way to play for cash and take a big shot at a big win. All you got to do is you select 2 or more players and choose if they'll have more or less of a particular stat. Let me give you one example. More than 1.5 hits by a hitter in a game, or less than 1.5 hits by a hitter in a game. And there's many, many, many other games within the game. Pick Six is available in most states, including California, Texas, Georgia, Missouri, and more. Cash in your baseball knowledge. New players get $50 in Pick Six credits instantly on just a $5 entry. So download the DraftKings app. It's easy. And use the code STL Sports. That's code STL Sports for new customers to play $5 and get $50 in Pick Six credits. I like that. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick Six from DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick Six not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick Six credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at picksix.draftkings.com/promos.
All right. Let's get back to our little game here of you be the manager. In Friday's 9th inning, what was your call? You go with Helsley or Fernandez to take on Lindor, and then if it extends, the other guys we mentioned, Soto and Alonso. Well, I don't have to tell you what happened. You know, Marmal went with Lindor, went with Fernandez to pitch to Lindor, and Lindor turned out the lights on the Cardinals with one swing of the bat. Social media was raging with criticisms of Marmal's move, and I don't offer any pushback on that. I really don't. I didn't like Marmal's answer when he was asked about his decision to go with Fernandez instead of his ace reliever, Ryan Helsley, the best National League reliever, as selected by some Hall of Fame relievers in the voting last year. Marmal said, quote, no manager in the league brings their closer in on the road in the 9th. And he was referring to a tie game in the 9th. Now, it wasn't a safe situation. And as we all know, Marmal strongly prefers using Helsley in a safe situation, although every now and then we see him deployed in an extra innings game when there wasn't a save on the line. But the thing that bugged me about what Oli did was what he said. You know, it's what he said, because he sort of like basically said he's got a policy and that's his policy. See, I don't think a manager can be so set and so dug deep in his thinking, because there simply isn't any kind of one-size-fits-all solution to cover every situation. Managers got to remain flexible based on situations, because not all situations are the same. For example, if the Mets had the dregs of their lineup coming up in the bottom of the 9th, then at least there's a little logic in bringing in Fernandez, at least trying to see if he can get it through. But the top of the lineup, the teeth of the lineup, the lions in this lineup in the form of Lindor, Soto, and Alonso, well, best of luck with that with Ryan Fernandez. Is he facing some of the weaker hitters in the lineup? He's got a shot. Not against these guys, not realistically anyway. There's more chance of Fernandez in that situation against those hitters. There's more chance of him failing than succeeding. And the best that Marmal could hope for is that Fernandez would find a way to finesse his way to 3 outs and keep the game tied. Then at that point, the hope switches to, hey, Cardinals scratch out a run or 2 in the top of the 10th and get a lead. Then you got Helsley. Ideally, that's what you want. I get that. But it didn't happen because Fernandez wasn't good enough to really deal with those guys. It was only the one guy, and he served up a meatball, and Lindor pounced, and the outcome may not have been 100% predictable, but, you know, was anyone at all surprised, the least bit surprised by the way that ended? I got to tell you, this was an unpleasant memory for me. It took me back to the 2014 NLCS when the Cardinals were eliminated by the Giants, on a 3-run homer by Travis Ishikawa off rusty Cardinals pitcher Michael Wacha in the bottom of the 9th. Now, I have to tell you the backstory on this very briefly. Wacha, who was troubled by a shoulder problem throughout 2014, he did not pitch at all in a big league game from June the 18th through September the 3rd. And then then in the remaining days of September, he made 4 starts. He had a 5.540 ERA, a 5.40 ERA in those 4 September starts and got hit hard. So now listen to this part. By the time Matheny gave Wacha the ball in the bottom of the 9th in Game 5 with the entire season on the line for the Cardinals, Wacha had not thrown a single pitch in a game in 19 days, and he had pitched in only 4 times. He had pitched only 4 times in 120 days. Wacha had absolutely nothing going for him that night in the ballpark by the Bay. I felt bad for him when I saw him coming in. This was a first guess. Me and my Post-Dispatch colleagues, we were like, can you believe he's doing this? Wacha hasn't pitched. This is where you're going to go. And you got Trevor Rosenthal out there. Oh, my goodness. It was one of the strangest and most ridiculous decisions I've ever seen made by a manager, and it still is. Trevor Rosenthal had 45 saves in the regular season in 2014, and then he put the Dodgers away with 3 saves in the NLDS. Now, Rosie blew a save in Game 2 against the Giants, and I don't know if that's what freaked Matheny out. But the Cardinals came back to win that game anyway, and so what? I mean, you got Trevor Rosenthal available to use in any kind of pressure, high leverage situation for as long as this series went on. But Matheny never used Rosenthal at any point during the final 3 games of that NLCS, and all 3 games were tight. All 3 games were in San Francisco. They were tight. And I don't want to recap all the games, but they were tight. The Cardinals had a small lead in one of them. They were tied in another one, and then it gets to Game 5, and we know what happened there. The Giants won all 3 of those games to clinch the series, all 3 of those tight games to clinch the series, and Rosenthal never appeared. In the post-game interview room after the Cardinals lost on that big bomb by Ishikawa, I was the guy who asked Matheny why he didn't use Rosenthal in that bottom of the 9th situation, given the fact that Wacha was almost certainly going to be at least a little rusty. Matheny looked at me gave me a look I can only describe as utter contempt, just utter disdain. And he said, and I quote, "We can't bring him in a tie game situation. We're on the road." And that was it. When I put that out on Twitter, oh my gosh, people like a lot of the baseball analysts went absolutely bananas. I mean, and these are guys I know. I mean, again, these are analysts. It's just not like people blowing off steam. A familiar line of thinking with them is like, what is this man doing managing a Major League Baseball team? Okay, that's neither here nor there. But I'll never forget that look. Matheny looked at me as if like, you're the dumbest person alive for asking me that question. He didn't say that, but that was his look. Well, let me put it to you this way. His answer was one of the dumbest answers I've ever heard in any situation doing this job for a living. So what are you saving your all-star closer for? Christmas Eve? The Cardinals' entire season was on the line that night, and you're going to go down with a guy who pitched 4 times in 128 days or 120 days, and you're going to watch the season burn away with your dominant closer in the bullpen looking on like, put me in, I'm here. The reason I'm talking about this so much, I had a serious Matheny flashback when Marmal tried to justify going with Fernandez instead of Helsley in the 9th inning Friday to confront the Mets' 3 best hitters. And again, I understand that Marmal was in a jam there. When you're going with a short bullpen, because let's face it, you got a short bullpen because you're going to 6-man rotation, and you don't want to hurt Miles Miklasz' feelings by taking him out of the rotation and just going with 5 guys. So you can't hurt Miles Miklasz' feelings. So your manager is at a disadvantage when Miles Miklasz, as he's been doing lately, gives you less than 5 innings. In the 6-man rotation setup, which the Cardinals are moving away from at least temporarily, and then they're going to go back to it, you're going to leave your bullpen's going to be vulnerable, and you're going to be vulnerable as the manager with a short bullpen if your starters don't give you at least 5 innings, and hopefully it would be 6, right? So with a clear conscience, see, I don't rip managers just to rip managers. That's just not how my brain is wired. It becomes, you know why? Because of all the conversations I had with Earl Weaver, all the conversations I had with Whitey Herzog, all the conversations I had with Tony La Russa. Always wanted to know what they were thinking. And they all generously shared with me what they were thinking, even if the decision didn't work. It doesn't mean it's the wrong decision. But sometimes the decision is the wrong decision, and it's got almost a predictable sense of doom and gloom before it even happens. So I have a clear conscience when I say I still think that the situation called for Helsley. Why? As I mentioned, the Mets had their 3 best hitters up. As a general principle, it probably makes sense to save your best reliever for the other team's top hitters and gamble. If that gamble was available, you could gamble with your lesser reliever that he can dispose of the other team's lesser hitters, the 7, 8, and 9 guys, right? If your non-closer can handle the 9th with the lesser hitters going against him, then this allows you to, quote, buy an inning for your team to try and score at the top of the 10th and then create a save situation for your put-away closer. See, that's kind of the objective here. But that's the point. The lesser hitters, or the least what's the word? The least impactful hitters were not coming up in the 9th. Their very best hitters were coming up. So you don't try to buy an inning with Ryan Fernandez against those guys. It's just a bad percentage play. So, you could, even thinking along this way, for your you could even use your closer to come into the 10th in a tie game. Because if you get through the 9th with a lesser reliever, you could still bring your closer in the 10th, because then he could buy you, at worst, he could buy you another inning by getting your team safely to the 11th. Either way, it still means using Helsley for 1 inning. And that's Marmal's policy too. And I totally understand that. It's to preserve him, because Helsley doesn't hold up well when he's doing a lot of multiple inning relief gigs. Helsley was well rested for this one, though. In fact, he didn't pitch at all in the Mets series, even though 2 of the 4 games were tied in the 9th inning. The Cardinals went down with JoJo Romero, and then they went down with Ryan Fernandez. Then they went down in the other close game with JoJo Romero. It didn't have to be that way. See, I just have it with all due respect to Oli Marmol, I just have an aversion to this rigid kind of thinking. Can't use the closer in the 9th inning of a tie game on the road. Who wrote this scripture? Where do I find that? Is this some kind of local, state, or federal law against this? If a manager who brings the closer in earlier than the traditional save situation, does that mean that, the manager is going to be fired on the spot, or perhaps led away by the authorities? I mean, this stuff just gets really, really silly. Now, there was a time in baseball. Remember the phrase fireman. The best relievers were called firemen. They weren't really called closers. And these guys were used in the high leverage situations that demanded their presence to handle an emergency. It doesn't have to be in a safe situation. Some of the emergencies are really, really dangerous earlier than a safe situations. You got to keep the game going to get to a safe situation. Now, listen, I realize those days are long gone, and I'm not the sort of fella, as you know, who lives in the past, hoping that we could turn back the clock and it could be 1970 all over again. I'm not that guy. I have happily evolved in my thinking, and I'm always searching for even more knowledge when it comes to baseball strategy and many other things. But still, I got to say, it made me smile to go back and think about Bruce Sutter and his 1982 season and how Whitey Herzog used him. Not saying that this would happen now. I'm just saying it's kind of fun to look back and realize how different the game was with at least certain managers. It didn't matter with Whitey. Sutter was going to come in the 7th inning, the 8th, the 9th, the 10th. He'd pitch multiple innings. In the 1982 postseason, the future Hall of Fame closer made 6 appearances against the Braves and the Brewers. 5 of the 6 appearances lasted 2+ innings, and Sutter had 2 wins and 3 saves in those 5 assignments. Not bad, right? Yep, those days are over, and I have no problem whatsoever to accept that. But it is kind of fun to think back to the old days, right? It's okay, harmless. However, why must today's manager be so like dug in on their thinking? What do they fear? Do they not want the old school baseball writers or the managers making fun of them because they stray from the norm and they do something unconventional in terms of strategy? I see. I don't really have a read on Marmal as being that type of guy, but that's what makes me so perplexed by his thinking, because I actually think that he is capable and he likes to think, quote, outside the box. But he sort of draws the line on this one, and I don't think it has to be that way. Here's the deal. If you allow a run in a tie game in the bottom of the ninth, you will lose, period. There's no second chance. There's no do-over. But if you utilize your top reliever against the other side top hitters in a ninth inning tie, you have a better chance of surviving and extending the game, which then gives you another shot at winning the game. And no one said it would be easy to win the game, but the whole point is to like shut that other team down when they are at their biggest threat to you. And as the old saying goes, survive and live for another day. And yeah, your team's hitters have a say in this. You could score a single run in the top of the 10th. So even in that situation, you're better off using your best pitcher in a tie game. If I'm saying if your offense doesn't score in the top of the 10th, you're still better off using your best pitcher in a tie game, even in the 10th, and then hope you get a lead that maybe your lesser reliever can take care of. At least there's some wiggle room in that scenario, as long as the lesser reliever keeps the ball in the ballpark and doesn't get blown up. There's no wiggle room, however, if your secondary reliever coughs up the game before your closer even gets a chance to come into the game. In theory, you could score more than one run in the top of the 10th. Anything's possible. So at least you would have some insurance for your lesser reliever to get the 3 outs necessary to seal the victory. Managers have some good reasons to do what they do with going with their best pitchers in tie games, meeting the closer or the fireman when they're on the road and it's the 9th inning and all knotted up on the scoreboard, but they almost never do it. Why is that? It's groupthink. It's just total groupthink. It's, well, this is the way it is done. But is the way it is done in such a rigid fashion, is it always wise to go with it, even if it doesn't make a whole lot of sense? But so many of these managers are the same. Must keep closer in the bullpen unless it's a safe situation. Must do that. Keep closer in the bullpen. Keep him in the bullpen. Safe situation only. Safe situation only. Yeah, it's almost robotic if you think about it. And if you constantly keep your closer in the pen and you hope for an extra inning safe situation, you may never get there, especially when the other side's got Lindor, Soto, and Alonso scheduled to bat first, second, and third in that inning. And by the way, isn't this the same manager who almost always puts his best defensive center fielder, his defensive closer into the game, late in the game, even if the score is tied in the 9th? I know there's a difference, but I'm just saying. Marmal's decision Friday night against the Mets wasn't anything close to being as egregious as that epic mistake made by Matheny in Game 5 of that 2014 NLCS. Again, I know Marmal was short on appealing options and all that stuff. But still, I wanted to see Helsley in that situation, because you got to just try to survive, get their top hitters out. You go with your best chance to do that in that situation, because if you don't, the game's over, right? The game's over if you use a guy with a 7.71 ERA who has lost complete sharpness and ability to dominate hitters with his slider, which was a dominant pitch last year. This season with Ryan Fernandez, that pitch is just so hittable. They're just blasting it to bits all the times. But you know what? Managing's not easy. And isn't it fun to talk about it? Isn't it fun, the second guessing, the first guessing? If we do this, and this has been only going on since the beginning of baseball, fans and media, first guessing or second guessing managers, it's really one of the most cherished traditions for baseball fans and media. So Oli Marmol gave us something to talk about late Friday night. That much is certain. Hey, thank you for watching. I'm sorry if this video was a little on the long side for you. I just like to be thorough. The boy here likes to have fun. I appreciate you watching. And thanks to DraftKings, the crown is yours. Thank you.